When Ava Collins opened the wrong hotel room door after a long shift, she expected an angry guest, not the most feared mafia don in New York bleeding across the floor. New York looked expensive from the outside. The bright lights, luxury cars, expensive hotels, and tall buildings made the city seem untouchable. But Ava Collins knew better. She knew how quickly money disappeared. She knew how rent notices looked taped to apartment doors. She knew what it felt like to work 14-hour shifts and still wonder if there would be enough money left at the end of the month. At 24 years old, Ava had already spent most of her life taking care of other people. After her father disappeared years earlier, everything changed. Her mother became sick. Medical bills piled up. Her younger brother dropped out of college because there was not enough money. And Ava became the person everyone depended on. That was why she worked 2 jobs. During the day, she waited tables in a small diner near Queens. At night, she worked inside one of Manhattan's most expensive hotels. The Ashford Grand stood near Central Park, like something from another world. The rich stayed there. Famous actors, politicians, athletes, men in expensive suits who tipped poorly and acted like they owned everything around them. Ava hated the place. She hated the fake smiles, the rude guests, and the way rich people treated hotel workers like they were invisible. But the pay was better than most places. So she stayed. That night, she was already exhausted before her shift even ended. Her feet hurt. Her back hurt. Her phone would not stop buzzing with messages from her landlord asking about late rent. Earlier that evening, her mother called crying because another hospital bill had arrived in the mail. By 11:30, Ava felt like she could barely think straight. She stood inside the housekeeping office folding towels while her manager walked around checking room service requests. Ava, her manager said, without looking up from a clipboard, "Room 1807 asked for extra towels." Ava nodded tiredly. "I'll take them." The manager handed her a room key card. "After that, you're done for the night." Those words were the only thing keeping her moving. She grabbed the towels, stepped into the elevator, and pressed the button for the 18th floor. The hallway upstairs looked quiet. Soft carpet, gold walls, expensive paintings. Everything smelled clean and expensive. Room 1807 sat near the end of the hallway. Ava walked toward it slowly while balancing the stack of folded towels against her chest. She stopped in front of the door and slid the key card into the lock. The light turned green. She pushed the door open. At first, everything looked normal. The room was dark except for a lamp near the far window. Expensive furniture filled the suite. An open suitcase rested near the couch. Then Ava saw the blood. It covered the white carpet near the center of the room. Dark red, fresh. For one horrible second, Ava froze. Then she looked up. A man sat against the wall near the bed. His white dress shirt was covered in blood. One hand pressed tightly against his side. His face looked pale beneath the dim light. But even injured, he looked dangerous. Tall, broad shoulders, dark hair, sharp jawline, expensive black pants, gold watch. His eyes locked onto hers immediately. Cold eyes, the kind that made people nervous. Ava almost screamed. Instead, she stumbled backward and nearly dropped the towels. "Oh my God!" The man did not answer. His breathing looked uneven. Blood still dripped through his fingers onto the carpet. For 1 second, Ava thought about running. This was not her problem. She could leave, call security, pretend she never saw anything. Then the man tried to stand. He failed immediately. His body hit the edge of the bed before he dropped back down again. That was when Ava noticed the gun near his hand. Her heart nearly stopped. She stared at it, then at him, then back at the blood. "Are you going to kill me?" she asked before she could stop herself. The man looked at her for a second. Then he gave the smallest shake of his head. That should have made her feel better. It did not. Ava looked toward the open door behind her. She should leave. Any normal person would leave. Instead, she slowly stepped back into the room. Because no matter how dangerous he looked, he was dying. "What happened to you?" The man leaned his head back against the wall. "Wrong place," he said quietly. "Wrong time." His voice sounded rough. Ava looked at the blood again. That was not a small wound. Someone had shot him. "You need a hospital." "No hospitals." "You could die." His expression stayed cold. Still no hospitals. Ava stared at him in disbelief. You're insane. For the first time, something close to amusement crossed his face. Only for a second. Then it disappeared again. Ava looked around the room quickly. Broken glass near the balcony door. A chair turned over beside the couch. One bullet hole in the wall near the window. Someone had attacked him here. Very recently. Ava swallowed hard. Who are you? The man looked at her quietly. Luca. She frowned. Luca what? He did not answer. That should have been another warning. Instead, Ava dropped the towels onto the couch and grabbed a clean washcloth from the bathroom sink. You're bleeding all over the carpet. Luca watched her carefully. Most people looked at him with fear the second they learned his name. This girl looked more annoyed than frightened. That interested him. Ava knelt beside him carefully. The closer she got, the more blood she saw. The bullet wound sat low near his ribs. It looked bad. You were shot. I noticed. Ava rolled her eyes. You should be unconscious. I'm trying not to be. For 1 second, Ava forgot to be scared, because beneath the blood and expensive clothes, Luca looked exhausted, like a man who had not slept properly in years. She pressed the washcloth gently near the wound. Luca's jaw tightened immediately. That hurts. No, he said flatly. I always look like this. Despite everything, Ava almost smiled. Then loud footsteps exploded in the hallway outside. Luca looked toward the door instantly. His entire expression changed. Danger moved into his face. The hotel room door burst open. 3 men rushed inside with guns already in their hands. Ava jumped to her feet. One of the men grabbed her arm immediately and shoved her against the wall. Who is she? I don't know. Another man snapped. She could be with them. Ava looked at the guns pointed at her and felt all the air leave her lungs. Wait, she said quickly. I work here. The man holding her tightened his grip harder. She saw too much. Luca slowly stood despite the pain. Let her go. The room became silent. The man holding Ava looked confused. But I said let her go. His voice stayed calm. That somehow made it more terrifying. The man released Ava immediately. She stepped away from him quickly and rubbed her wrist. Her entire body shook now. One of the guards moved toward Luca. You need a doctor. Luca looked toward Ava instead. She stays. Ava stared at him. What? You heard me. One of the guards frowned. She could be a witness. Luca's eyes stayed on Ava. Or she could be the reason I'm still alive. The room went quiet again. Ava looked between all of them. She still had no idea who Luca really was. But she understood one thing now. These men were not normal businessmen. The way they moved, the way they talked, the guns. Something about them felt wrong. Dangerous. One of the guards finally stepped forward. Mr. Moretti, we need to leave before the police arrive. Ava stopped breathing for a second. Moretti. She knew that name. Everyone in New York knew that name. Luca Moretti, the most feared mafia boss in the city. Stories about him spread everywhere. People said he controlled half the docks near Brooklyn, that he owned clubs, casinos, restaurants, and politicians. Some people said he was responsible for dozens of deaths. Others said the police had been trying to put him in prison for years. Ava looked at Luca again. Now she understood the expensive suit, the guards, the gun, the cold eyes. Fear hit her all at once. You're Luca Moretti. One of the guards immediately grabbed his gun tighter. Luca looked at Ava carefully. You know who I am now. Ava stepped backward. You're a criminal. Luca looked almost bored. That depends who you ask. You should call the police. No, you were shot. And yet, somehow I'm still talking. Ava stared at him in disbelief. Everything inside her told her to run. But something stopped her. Maybe because he looked weaker than he wanted everyone to believe. Maybe because she knew what it felt like to survive one bad day after another. Or maybe because if Luca Moretti wanted her dead, she would already be dead. One of the guards stepped toward her. You're coming with us. No, Ava said immediately. You saw his face. I already wish I hadn't. The guard looked annoyed. Luca finally stepped forward despite the blood staining his shirt. She's not going anywhere with you. The room became quiet. The guard frowned. Mr. Moretti? She stays with me. Ava looked at Luca. Why? Luca studied her face for a second, because there was something strange about her. She did not act like the women he usually met. She did not care about his money. She did not flirt with him. She did not look impressed by his name. She looked angry, exhausted, and somehow honest. I don't trust people, Luca said quietly. But you walked into a room with a bleeding man and stayed anyway. Ava crossed her arms. That doesn't mean I trust you. For the first time, Luca almost smiled. Good. One of the guards brought a first aid kit from the bathroom counter. Luca sat back down near the edge of the bed. Ava looked around the room again. Then she realized something. There was blood leading toward the bathroom door. A lot of blood. Too much. Her stomach tightened. Slowly, she looked toward the bathroom. The door was half open. Nobody else seemed to notice. Luca watched her carefully. What is it? Ava did not answer. Instead, she stepped toward the bathroom slowly. The guards looked confused. Ava, Luca said sharply, but she was already pushing the door open. For one horrible second, she forgot how to breathe. A man lay dead on the bathroom floor, his eyes still open, blood covering his shirt, a gun near one hand. Ava stumbled backward immediately. Her face turned pale, because suddenly, this was no longer just a dangerous hotel room. It was a crime scene, and somehow, she was standing in the middle of it. Ava thought helping a wounded stranger would end her nightmare, until she learned the man she saved controlled half the city. For several seconds, Ava could not move. The dead man on the bathroom floor looked like something from a nightmare. Blood covered the tiles beneath him. His hand still rested near the gun beside him. One side of the mirror had been shattered by a bullet. Ava stepped backward until her shoulders hit the wall. Her breathing became uneven. This is insane. Luca sat near the bed with blood still staining his shirt. No, he said quietly. This is New York. Ava looked at him in disbelief. The guards quickly moved toward the bathroom. One of them shut the door immediately, while another pulled the curtains closed near the windows. Everything inside the suite changed. The room no longer felt like a hotel room. It felt like a bunker, like a place where people disappeared. Ava looked toward the door. I'm leaving. One of Luca's guards stepped in front of her instantly. No, you're not. Ava's chest tightened. I work here. I have a family waiting for me. The guard did not move. Luca slowly stood from the edge of the bed. His face looked pale, but he still carried himself like a man used to control. You can't leave yet. Ava stared at him. You don't get to decide that. Luca walked closer. Yes, he said quietly. I do. Those words made something inside Ava snap. She had spent years being controlled by landlords, debt collectors, doctors, and bosses. She was tired of people acting like her life belonged to them. You're not kidnapping me. Luca looked down at her. You walked into a room where a man was killed and another man was shot. The people who did this know someone else was here. Ava's stomach tightened. You think they know about me? Luca did not answer. That silence told her everything. For the first time since entering the room, real fear moved through her chest. Because this was not only about Luca anymore. It was about her too. One of the guards walked toward Luca. We secured the floor, he said. Nobody gets in without permission. Luca nodded once. Then he looked at Ava again. You're staying here tonight. No. Yes. I'm not your prisoner. Luca's eyes stayed cold. No, he said. You're my responsibility. That answer only made her angrier. I didn't ask for your protection. You also didn't ask to walk into this room, Luca said. But now you're here. The room went quiet, because he was right. No matter how much Ava hated it, she was already involved. The next few hours felt unreal. Luca's men locked down the entire 18th floor. Hotel staff disappeared. Security cameras were disabled. Expensive men in dark suits moved through the hallways while pretending nothing had happened. By morning, the dead body in the bathroom was gone. So was every sign of blood. The suite looked clean again, almost normal. That scared Ava more than anything, because it meant Luca Moretti had enough power to make murder disappear overnight. Ava sat near the far window, wearing one of the hotel robes, while Luca rested on the couch nearby. His wound had been cleaned and bandaged by a private doctor who arrived before sunrise. Now he looked calmer. Still dangerous, but calmer. "You control this whole hotel," Ava said quietly. Luca looked up from the whiskey glass in his hand. "I own part of it." She stared at him. "Of course you do." The city stretched below them through the windows. Morning sunlight covered Manhattan. People walked outside like nothing had happened, like men were not being killed on the 18th floor of expensive hotels. "What happens now?" Ava asked. Luca stayed quiet for a second. "You stay close to me." "That's not happening." "It already is." Ava crossed her arms. "You really enjoy giving orders." Luca looked almost amused. "And you enjoy ignoring them." For 1 second, something changed between them. Not softer, but lighter. Then it disappeared. A knock came from the suite door. One of Luca's men stepped inside. His name was Dominic. Tall, broad shoulders, short dark hair, a scar above one eyebrow. He looked at Ava like he did not trust her. "Mr. Moretti," Dominic said, "we found the shooter's car." Luca looked toward him. Who was driving? No ID. Fake plates. Luca's expression darkened. "Any word on Vincent?" Dominic shook his head. "Nothing yet." Ava frowned. "Who's Vincent?" Nobody answered immediately. Then Luca looked toward her. "Someone who wants me dead." That answer stayed with her, because he said it so casually, like death was normal in his world. Maybe it was. Later that afternoon, Ava stood near the kitchen inside the suite, while Luca sat in the office area, looking through paperwork. The suite looked bigger during daylight. Expensive furniture, marble floors, a private dining room, a balcony overlooking Central Park. Everything looked perfect, but Ava still felt trapped. She walked toward the front door again. Immediately, Dominic blocked her path. "I need to go home." "No, my mother will think I'm dead." Dominic's face stayed blank. "Mr. Moretti said you stay here." Ava looked over his shoulder toward Luca. "You can't keep me locked up." Luca barely looked up from the papers in his hands. "Yes, I can." Ava marched across the room. "You're unbelievable." Luca looked up at her slowly. "And you're alive because I am." The answer made her furious. "You think I owe you something?" Luca leaned back in his chair. "I think if Vincent D'Angelo's people find you first, you die." The room went silent, because for the first time, Ava realized how serious this was. Whoever attacked Luca knew she saw too much. And people like that did not leave witnesses alive. Ava looked away first. That only made her angrier, because she hated when Luca was right. Over the next few days, Ava remained inside the suite. Luca's men brought clothes for her. Food arrived whenever she wanted. Guards stood outside every door. It should have felt comfortable. Instead, it felt like a cage. Luca spent most of his time on phone calls and meetings or reading reports brought by his men. The more Ava watched him, the more she realized how powerful he really was. People listened when he spoke. Men twice his age lowered their eyes around him. One phone call from Luca could shut down businesses, move money, or make people disappear. That kind of power should have impressed her. Instead, it only made her nervous. One night, Ava walked into the suite's private dining room and found two of Luca's men talking quietly. They stopped the second they saw her, but not before she heard one sentence. She saw his face. "Vincent won't let her live." Ava froze. The men looked uncomfortable. Then they quickly walked away. That night, she could not sleep. She sat near the window with a blanket around her shoulders while New York glowed outside. Luca eventually walked into the room, wearing dark sweatpants and a black shirt. He looked less dangerous without the expensive suit. More human. Almost. "You should sleep," he said quietly. Ava looked toward him. "Your men think I'm going to die." Luca stayed silent. That silence scared her. "You really think they'll come after me?" He looked out the window. "Yes." Ava wrapped the blanket tighter around herself. "Why?" Luca looked toward her. "Because people like Vincent D'Angelo don't leave loose ends." The room became quiet. Ava looked down at her hands. "My life was already hard enough before this." For the first time, Luca's face softened slightly. What happened? She almost laughed, because Luca Moretti was probably the last person in the world she should be talking to. Still, she answered, "My mother is sick. My landlord wants rent. My brother dropped out of school because we couldn't afford it." Luca listened quietly. Ava looked away. "And now I'm trapped in a hotel suite with a mafia boss." For 1 second, Luca almost smiled. "You make that sound like a bad thing." "It is a bad thing." He looked at her for a second longer than necessary. Then he turned away. That small moment stayed with Ava longer than she wanted, because beneath the expensive suits and cold eyes, Luca looked lonely, deeply lonely. The next morning, Ava woke up to shouting in the other room. She stepped into the hallway quietly. Luca stood near the office area while Dominic faced him. "You have a rat inside the organization," Dominic said. "Nobody else knew where you were." Luca's expression stayed cold. "Find him." Dominic lowered his voice. "We don't know who we can trust anymore." Luca looked toward the windows. "Then trust no one." Ava stepped back before they saw her, because suddenly she understood something worse. The person who betrayed Luca was close to him, very close. That explained why he trusted no one, and maybe why he looked so tired all the time. Later that afternoon, Ava entered Luca's office area looking for her phone charger. The desk sat covered in files, paperwork, and expensive pens. She should not have touched anything. But then she saw something strange. A thin black folder near the edge of the desk. One word was written across the front in silver letters. "Collins." Ava stopped breathing for a second. Slowly, she picked it up. Inside were photographs, old bank records, copies of newspaper articles, and one faded picture of her father standing beside an older man in a dark suit. Ava stared at it, because she recognized the older man immediately. He looked exactly like Luca, only older. The room suddenly felt colder. She turned the page. Her father's name appeared again. Thomas Collins. Employee records. Payment reports. Several notes written by hand. One sentence near the bottom of the final page made her chest tighten. Thomas Collins worked for the Moretti family from 1998 to 2004. Ava stared at the words, because suddenly everything changed. Her father did not disappear by accident. He was connected to Luca's family. The stranger Ava trusted was hiding a truth about her family that could destroy everything she believed. For several seconds, Ava could not move. The black folder stayed open in her hands, while her heart pounded hard enough to hurt. Thomas Collins worked for the Moretti family from 1998 to 2004. She read the sentence again. Then again. Nothing changed. Her father's name was still there. Ava looked down at the old photograph in disbelief. Her father stood beside Luca's father outside a large office building somewhere in Manhattan. He looked younger, cleaner, more confident, not like the tired man she remembered disappearing when she was a child. You weren't supposed to see that. Ava turned quickly. Luca stood near the doorway. He wore a black dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up. The bandage near his ribs still showed beneath the fabric. His face looked calm. Too calm. Ava held the folder tighter. "You knew." Luca looked at the papers in her hands. "Yes." The answer made her angry immediately. "You knew who my father was this whole time." Luca stayed silent. "That's why you kept me here," Ava said. "That's why you wouldn't let me leave." Luca walked slowly toward the desk. "You should sit down." "No." His jaw tightened slightly. "Ava, don't tell me to sit down." The room became quiet, because for the first time since she met him, Ava looked truly furious. Not scared, not nervous. Furious. She held up the photograph. "My father worked for your family?" Luca looked at the picture for a second. Then he nodded once. "He worked for my father." Ava stared at him. "Doing what?" "He was an accountant." The answer surprised her. "My father?" Luca nodded again. "He handled money, accounts, transfers." Ava looked back down at the file, because suddenly old memories felt different. The nights her father stayed late at work, the expensive gifts he sometimes brought home, the way he always looked over his shoulder when they walked down the street. As a child, she never questioned any of it. Now she realized she should have. He never told us. Luca looked out toward the window. He was trying to protect you. Ava laughed bitterly. Funny, everyone keeps saying that while hiding things from me. Luca stayed silent. That only made her angrier. You knew my father. Yes. You knew him before he disappeared. Luca looked back at her. Yes. The room felt colder now, smaller, because every answer only led to another question. Ava looked directly at him. What happened to him? For the first time, Luca looked away. That scared her more than anything else. Because men like Luca Moretti did not look away unless the truth was ugly. He stole something. Luca said quietly. Ava frowned. What? Luca walked toward the bar near the far side of the room and poured himself a drink. Evidence. She stared at him. What kind of evidence? Luca looked down at the glass in his hand. Bank records. Names. Payments. Information about judges, politicians, police captains. The room became silent. Ava felt her stomach tighten. He stole evidence from your father? Luca nodded once. My father spent years paying powerful people to protect his businesses. His expression darkened. Your father found out how deep it went. Ava looked down at the folder again, because suddenly, her father did not look weak in those photographs. He looked brave, maybe too brave. He tried to expose them. Luca's eyes moved toward her. Yes. The answer hit harder than she expected, because for years, Ava had believed her father abandoned them, left them, walked away without caring what happened afterward. Now she realized the truth might be much worse. He disappeared because of your family. Luca stayed silent. That silence told her enough. Ava looked at him with tears already burning in her eyes. You let it happen. His face hardened immediately. You think I wanted that? You knew. The words exploded out of her before she could stop them. You knew what your father was. You knew what kind of people surrounded him. Luca looked down at the floor for a second, then back at her. I was younger. That's not an excuse. No, he said quietly. It's not. For 1 second, neither of them moved, because Luca was not defending himself. He was agreeing with her. That made everything worse. He came to me, Luca said quietly. Ava froze. What? Luca's voice became lower. Your father came to me a few days before he disappeared. The room became still. He wanted my help. Ava could barely breathe. With what? Luca looked toward the city outside the windows. He wanted to leave New York. He wanted to take you, your mother, everyone, and disappear. Her throat tightened instantly. He was trying to save us. Luca nodded once. But my father found out first. The word stayed between them. Heavy, painful. Ava looked down at the photograph in her hands. Because suddenly, she saw her father differently. Not as the man who abandoned her, but as the man who tried to save her and failed. What happened after that? Luca closed his eyes briefly. My father sent men after him. Ava's chest tightened. And you? Luca looked down at his glass. I tried to get to him first. His jaw tightened. But I was too late. The room became quiet again, because there it was. The same thing Luca carried every day. Guilt. Ava saw it clearly now. He blamed himself. Maybe he had blamed himself for years. You could have done more. The words came out softer this time. Luca looked at her. I know. No anger. No excuses. Just guilt. That honesty hurt her more than anything else. Because for the first time since meeting Luca Moretti, Ava saw the man beneath the reputation. Not the mafia boss. Not the dangerous man everyone feared. Just someone carrying too much pain. What happened to the evidence? Luca looked toward the desk. Nobody knows. Ava frowned. What do you mean nobody knows? Your father disappeared before anyone could find it. Luca placed the glass down slowly. My father spent years looking for it. Then Vincent D'Angelo started looking too. Ava looked confused. Why? Luca walked toward her. Because that evidence can destroy people. The stranger Ava trusted was hiding a truth about her family that could destroy everything she believed. For several seconds, Ava could not move. The The black folder stayed open in her hands, while her heart pounded hard enough to hurt. Thomas Collins worked for the Moretti family from 1998 to 2004. She read the sentence again. Then again. Nothing changed. Her father's name was still there. Ava looked down at the old photograph in disbelief. Her father stood beside Luca's father outside a large office building somewhere in Manhattan. He looked younger, cleaner, more confident, not like the tired man she remembered disappearing when she was a child. You weren't supposed to see that. Ava turned quickly. Luca stood near the doorway. He wore a black dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up. The bandage near his ribs still showed beneath the fabric. His face looked calm. Too calm. Ava held the folder tighter. You knew. Luca looked at the papers in her hands. Yes. The answer made her angry immediately. You knew who my father was this whole time. Luca stayed silent. That's why you kept me here, Ava said. That's why you wouldn't let me leave. Luca walked slowly toward the desk. You should sit down. No. His jaw tightened slightly. Ava, don't tell me to sit down. The room became quiet. Because for the first time since she met him, Ava looked truly furious. Not scared. Not nervous. Furious. She held up the photograph. My father worked for your family? Luca looked at the picture for a second. Then he nodded once. He worked for my father. Ava stared at him. Doing what? He was an accountant. The answer surprised her. My father? Luca nodded again. He handled money, accounts, transfers. Ava looked back down at the file. Because suddenly, old memories felt different. The nights her father stayed late at work. The expensive gifts he sometimes brought home. The way he always looked over his shoulder when they walked down the street. As a child, she never questioned any of it. Now she realized she should have. He never told us. Luca looked out toward the window. He was trying to protect you. Ava laughed bitterly. Funny, everyone keeps saying that while hiding things from me. Luca stayed silent. That only made her angrier. You knew my father. Yes. You knew him before he disappeared. Luca looked back at her. Yes. The room felt colder now. Smaller. Because every answer only led to another question. Ava looked directly at him. What happened to him? For the first time, Luca looked away. That scared her more than anything else. Because men like Luca Moretti did not look away unless the truth was ugly. He stole something. Luca said quietly. Ava frowned. What? Luca walked toward the bar near the far side of the room and poured himself a drink. Evidence. She stared at him. What kind of evidence? Luca looked down at the glass in his hand. Bank records. Names. Payments. Information about judges, politicians, police captains. The room became silent. Ava felt her stomach tighten. He stole evidence from your father? Luca nodded once. My father spent years paying powerful people to protect his businesses. His expression darkened. Your father found out how deep it went. Ava looked down at the folder again. Because suddenly, her father did not look weak in those photographs. He looked brave. Maybe too brave. He tried to expose them. Luca's eyes moved toward her. Yes. The answer hit harder than she expected. Because for years, Ava had believed her father abandoned them. Left them, walked away without caring what happened afterward. Now she realized the truth might be much worse. He disappeared because of your family. Luca stayed silent. That silence told her enough. Ava looked at him with tears already burning in her eyes. You let it happen. His face hardened immediately. You think I wanted that? You knew. The words exploded out of her before she could stop them. You knew what your father was. You knew what kind of people surrounded him. Luca looked down at the floor for a second, then back at her. I was younger. That's not an excuse. No, he said quietly. It's not. For 1 second, neither of them moved. Because Luca was not defending himself. He was agreeing with her. That made everything worse. He came to me, Luca said quietly. Ava froze. What? Luca's voice became lower. Your father came to me a few days before he disappeared. The room became still. He wanted my help. Ava could barely breathe. With what? Luca looked toward the city outside the windows. He wanted to leave New York. He wanted to take you, your mother, everyone, and disappear. Her throat tightened instantly. He was trying to save us. Luca nodded once. But my father found out first. The word stayed between them. Heavy, painful. Ava looked down at the photograph in her hands. Because suddenly, she saw her father differently. Not as the man who abandoned her, but as the man who tried to save her and failed. What happened after that? Luca closed his eyes briefly. My father sent men after him. Ava's chest tightened. And you? Luca looked down at his glass. I tried to get to him first. His jaw tightened. But I was too late. The room became quiet again, because there it was. The same thing Luca carried every day. Guilt. Ava saw it clearly now. He blamed himself. Maybe he had blamed himself for years. You could have done more. The words came out softer this time. Luca looked at her. I know. No anger. No excuses. Just guilt. That honesty hurt her more than anything else. Because for the first time since meeting Luca Moretti, Ava saw the man beneath the reputation. Not the mafia boss. Not the dangerous man everyone feared. Just someone carrying too much pain. What happened to the evidence? Luca looked toward the desk. Nobody knows. Ava frowned. What do you mean nobody knows? Your father disappeared before anyone could find it. Luca placed the glass down slowly. My father spent years looking for it. Then Vincent D'Angelo started looking too. Ava looked confused. Why? Luca walked toward her. Because that evidence can destroy people. Ava thought the luxury hotel was the safest place in the city, until bullets started tearing through the walls. The first gunshot shattered the glass near the hotel suite entrance. The second tore through the wall above Luca's desk. Within seconds, the entire room exploded into chaos. Ava dropped beside the couch as men shouted in the hallway. One of Luca's guards slammed the suite door shut, while another pulled a gun from beneath his jacket. Luca moved faster than anyone else. 1 second, he stood near the desk. The next, he was in front of Ava with a gun in his hand, and his body blocking hers. Stay down. His voice sounded colder than she had ever heard it. More bullets ripped through the walls. Glass exploded across the carpet. Someone screamed outside in the hallway. Ava pressed herself lower against the floor, while Luca crouched beside her. He looked toward one of his men, standing near the doorway. How many? At least 10, the guard answered. Maybe more. Luca's face stayed calm. Too calm, like he had seen this before, like violence belonged to him. Another burst of gunfire echoed through the hallway. Then came the sound of a body hitting the floor outside. One of Luca's men looked toward him. Vincent's people? Luca nodded once. Who else? Ava looked up at him. Who was Vincent? Luca glanced at her briefly. Someone worse than me. That answer should have scared her. Instead, it made her realize how dangerous this really was. Luca looked toward the door again. We're leaving. The guard frowned. The elevators are blocked. Then we use the service stairs. Another bullet tore through the wall. Ava flinched. Luca immediately grabbed her arm. Can you walk? She nodded even though her hands would not stop shaking. Luca stood first. Then he pulled her up beside him. The suite looked completely different now. Broken glass covered the floor. Smoke drifted through the air. One of the expensive paintings had fallen from the wall. Blood stained the carpet near the entrance. Ava looked toward it. One of Luca's guards lay motionless beside the door. For 1 second, she froze. Because suddenly, none of this felt distant anymore. It felt real. Terrifyingly real. Luca noticed where she was looking. Don't. His voice stayed hard. Keep moving. The door opened a few inches. One of Luca's men looked into the hallway. Clear. Luca kept one hand on Ava's arm as they stepped out. The 18th floor looked like a battlefield. Guests screamed near the far end of the hallway. Hotel staff crouched behind overturned carts. Smoke alarms blared overhead. Men with guns moved through the corridor, while broken glass crunched beneath their shoes. Ava's chest tightened, because for the first time, she saw Luca's world exactly as it was. Violent, bloody, merciless. Two armed men appeared near the elevators. Luca reacted instantly. He shoved Ava behind him and fired twice. Both men dropped before they could raise their weapons. Ava stared at him in shock. Luca lowered the gun slowly. His expression did not change. That frightened her more than anything else, because he looked too used to this. Too comfortable. He grabbed her hand again. Move. They reached the service hallway near the back of the floor. One of Luca's men punched open the stairwell door. The group rushed inside. The stairwell echoed with distant gunshots and footsteps. Luca stayed close behind Ava as they moved down floor after floor. Halfway to the lobby, another guard stopped suddenly. There are men waiting on 12. Luca's jaw tightened. Then we go up. The guard looked surprised. Up. The roof. Without another word, Luca turned Ava around and pulled her back up the stairs. Her legs felt weak. Her lungs burned. But she kept moving, because stopping meant dying. By the time they reached the roof, rain had started falling across Manhattan. Cold wind whipped across the top of the building. The city lights glowed below. Luca's helicopter waited near the far side of the roof. Two pilots stood nearby with weapons already drawn. Ava almost felt relief. Then gunshots exploded behind them. Vincent's men burst through the stairwell door. Everything happened at once. Luca pushed Ava toward the helicopter. His guards opened fire. Men dropped. Bullets slammed into metal. Rain covered the roof. Ava turned just in time to see Luca grab one of Vincent's men and throw him hard against the side of the stairwell wall. The man hit the concrete and stopped moving. Luca looked terrifying, not because he was angry, because he looked completely calm. Like hurting people was as natural to him as breathing. One of Vincent's men aimed toward Ava. Luca saw it instantly. He stepped in front of her and fired before the other man could pull the trigger. Blood hit the wet concrete. Ava stared at Luca because she realized something important. He was not only trying to protect her, he was willing to die for her. Within seconds, they reached the helicopter. Luca pushed Ava inside first. Then his men climbed in behind him. The helicopter lifted into the rain-covered sky, just as more bullets hit the roof below. For the first time since the attack started, Ava could finally breathe. Barely. She looked down through the window. The hotel grew smaller beneath them. Police cars surrounded the streets below. Ambulances flashed through the rain. The entire city looked like chaos. Luca sat across from her. Blood stained one side of his shirt again. A cut near his jaw dripped slowly down his neck. He looked exhausted, but his eyes stayed on her. You hurt. Ava shook her head quickly. No. Luca nodded once. Then he looked away. That small moment should not have mattered, but it did, because even after everything, he still looked at her first. An hour later, the helicopter landed on the roof of an empty warehouse in Brooklyn. Black SUVs already waited below. Luca led Ava downstairs through dark hallways and locked doors until they reached a private garage. Several of his men stood nearby. Their faces looked tense. One of them stepped toward Luca immediately. Vincent knew exactly where you were. Luca's expression darkened. Yes, there's a leak. The room went quiet, because everyone already knew it was true. Somebody inside Luca's organization had given Vincent information. Somebody close enough to know where Luca was staying. Ava looked around at the men. None of them looked trustworthy. That made everything worse. Luca opened the back door of the SUV. Get in. Ava stopped. Where are we going? Out of the city. One of Luca's older guards frowned. We should stay here. We can lock the place down. Luca looked at him. No. The guard hesitated. Luca. He knows the city too well. Luca's voice stayed calm. We leave tonight. The men fell silent immediately, because nobody argued with Luca Moretti when he sounded like that. The SUV sped through dark roads beneath the city. Ava sat beside Luca in the back seat, while rain hit the windows. For several minutes, nobody spoke. Then Ava finally looked at him. You killed those men. Luca did not react. Yes. You didn't even hesitate. The SUV became quiet. Luca looked out the window. If I hesitate, people die. The answer stayed with her, because deep down, Ava knew he was telling the truth. That was the horrible thing about Luca's world. Men like him did not survive by being kind. They survived by becoming monsters before someone else could. After another hour, they reached a private road outside the city. Trees lined both sides. The rain had slowed. Eventually, the SUV turned toward an old lake house hidden behind iron gates and tall woods. It looked nothing like Luca's hotel suite. No marble, no gold, no expensive art. Just a quiet house beside dark water. For the first time since meeting Luca, Ava saw a place that actually felt personal. The inside of the house looked warm. Wooden floors, old bookshelves, a stone fireplace, large windows facing the lake. Luca removed his jacket slowly and placed his gun on the kitchen table. For the first time all night, he looked tired, really tired. One of his guards entered the room. We secured the area. Luca nodded once. Then the guard hesitated. "Can I ask you something?" Luca looked at him. The man glanced briefly toward Ava. Why does she matter so much? The room became quiet, because everyone wanted to know. Luca looked toward Ava, then back at the guard. She matters because Vincent thinks she knows where the evidence is. The guard frowned. That's not what I asked. Luca's expression darkened immediately, then asked a different question. The guard looked away. Ava watched the entire exchange carefully, because even if Luca would not admit it, everyone around him could already see the truth. She mattered to him. Too much. Later that night, Ava stood alone near the lake outside the house. The rain had finally stopped. Cold wind moved across the water. For the first time in hours, everything felt quiet. Then Luca appeared beside her. He stood with both hands in his pockets. "You should be inside." Ava looked toward the lake. "So should you." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Ava looked at him. "You could have left me behind." Luca looked at her immediately. "No, you barely know me." His expression changed slightly. "That's not true." The answer surprised her. Ava turned toward him fully. "What does that mean?" Luca looked out across the lake. For several seconds, he stayed silent. Then he finally spoke. "Your father saved my life once." Ava stopped breathing for a second. Luca kept his eyes on the dark water. "He took a bullet meant for me." Luca Moretti had spent his entire life avoiding love, until Ava Collins made him want something more than power. The morning after Luca admitted that Ava's father had once saved his life, the lake house felt different, quieter, closer. Rain no longer covered the windows, and sunlight finally stretched across the lake outside. But something had changed between them. Ava stood near the kitchen counter holding a cup of coffee, while Luca sat at the old wooden table reading reports from his men in New York. Neither of them mentioned what he said near the lake. Neither of them mentioned the way Luca looked at her afterward. But the silence between them no longer felt cold. It felt dangerous in a different way. Luca looked exhausted. He had not slept much. Ava noticed in the tiredness beneath his eyes and the way he kept rubbing his hand across the scar near his jaw. "Vincent's men are still searching outside the city," Luca said quietly. Ava looked toward him. "How close are they?" Luca folded one of the maps on the table. "Closer than I want." That answer should have scared her. It did. But somehow, the fear felt smaller when Luca was near. Over the next few days, they stayed inside the lake house. Luca's men brought food, clothes, weapons, and information. Vincent D'Angelo had spread rumors across New York. Some believed Ava had the missing evidence. Others believed she knew where her father hid it. Either way, Vincent wanted her alive. For now, one afternoon, Ava found Luca standing near the dock behind the house. The sky was clear for the first time in days. Sunlight reflected across the water. Luca stood with both hands in his coat pockets, staring out across the lake like he was somewhere far away. Ava walked toward him slowly. "You come out here a lot." Luca nodded once. "My mother used to bring me here." Ava stopped beside him. "You miss her?" Luca looked down at the water. "She died when I was 17. The answer surprised her, because Luca almost never spoke about himself. "She was the only person in my family who tried to protect me from my father." His voice stayed calm. Too calm, like he had spent years teaching himself how to speak about pain without feeling it. "She used to tell me I could be more than this," he said quietly. "More than the family, more than the violence. Ava looked at him carefully, because suddenly, Luca did not seem dangerous. He seemed lonely, like a man who had spent his whole life carrying things too heavy for anyone else to see. "You still can," she said softly. Luca looked at her. For 1 second, his face changed, not softer, sad. "You don't know what I've done." The word stayed with Ava long after they walked back inside, because deep down, she already knew something important. Cruel men did not protect people the way Luca protected her. Cruel men did not stand in front of bullets for strangers. That night, the power went out during another storm. The house went dark except for the fireplace in the living room. Ava sat on the couch wrapped in a blanket, while Luca lit candles around the room. The warm light changed him somehow, made him look less like the feared mafia boss from Manhattan, more like a man. "You ever think about leaving all of this?" Ava asked quietly. Luca looked over at her. "Leaving what?" "The city, the family, everything." He sat across from her near the fire. "When I was younger, I thought I could." Ava watched him carefully. "What changed?" "My father died." His expression darkened. "Then my brother disappeared. The business became mine." He looked into the fire. "After that, there was no leaving." The answer hurt more than she expected, because Luca said it like he stopped believing in better things a long time ago. "You could still leave," Ava said softly. Luca looked up at her. For a second, neither of them moved. Then he looked away first. "No," he said quietly. "Not anymore." The room became silent, except for the storm outside. Ava hated how much his answer bothered her, because she wanted him to believe there could still be something else. Something beyond fear and blood and power. Something better. The next afternoon, one of Luca's men arrived at the house with bad news. Vincent's people had found one of Luca's warehouses in Brooklyn. 2 of his guards had disappeared. Another driver had been found dead near Queens. Someone inside Luca's organization was still feeding Vincent information. Luca stood near the kitchen table looking through photographs and reports while Ava watched him carefully. The more danger surrounded them, the colder he became, like the man from the hotel slowly returned every time he felt too much. "We should move again," one of the guards said. Luca shook his head immediately. "Not yet." The guard looked frustrated. "They're getting closer." Luca's jaw tightened. "I said not yet." The room became quiet. Ava noticed the way the other men looked at her after that, because they all understood the truth. Luca was staying because of her. That night, Ava could not sleep. Wind hit the windows. The entire house creaked softly in the dark. Eventually, she walked downstairs. She found Luca sitting alone near the fireplace with a glass of whiskey in one hand. He looked tired. "You should sleep," he said without looking at her. "So should you." Luca almost smiled. Almost. Ava sat beside him quietly. For a while, neither of them spoke. Then she noticed something sitting beside him on the couch. An old wooden box. "What's that?" Luca looked down at it. "Something that belonged to your father." Ava's chest tightened instantly. Luca handed her the box slowly. Inside were old photographs, a silver watch, a lighter, several folded papers, and one sealed envelope with her name written across the front. Ava stopped breathing. Her hands shook as she picked it up. "What is this?" Luca looked toward the fire. "He left it with me years ago." Ava stared at him. "You had this the whole time?" Luca nodded once. "I was waiting until you were ready." For a moment, she almost got angry, because she was tired of people keeping pieces of her life hidden from her. But when she looked down at the envelope again, the anger disappeared, because for the first time in years, she had something from her father. She opened it carefully. The paper inside looked old and slightly worn, but the handwriting was clear. "Ava, if you are reading this, it means I never made it back to you. Please believe one thing before anything else. I never left because I wanted to." Tears filled Ava's eyes instantly. She kept reading. "There are dangerous people around us. Men who care more about power than lives. I try to protect you from them, but I do not know if I succeeded. If Luca gives you this letter one day, trust him. He is not the man people think he is." Ava looked up at Luca. He stayed silent. She looked back down at the letter. You were the best thing in my life. Every choice I made for you. I wanted to take you away from all of this. Somewhere safe, somewhere quiet, somewhere nobody could ever hurt you. I am sorry I cannot give you that life. Please do not hate me for disappearing. I loved you before you were born. I will love you after I am gone. Love, Dad. By the time Ava finished reading, tears were running down her face, because for years she carried one terrible belief, that her father left willingly, that maybe he did not love her enough to stay. Now she knew the truth. He had been trying to save her the entire time. He never abandoned me, Ava whispered. Luca looked at her quietly. No, he said. He didn't. Ava pressed a letter against her chest. For several seconds, she could not speak. Luca moved closer slowly. Not enough to touch her. Just enough so she would not feel alone. He wanted to come back for you, Luca said softly. He tried. Ava looked at him through tears. Then what happened to him? The room changed immediately, because suddenly the silence felt heavier, more dangerous. Luca looked down at the whiskey glass in his hand, then toward the fire. You already know, he said quietly. Ava's heart started pounding. No, she whispered. I don't. Luca closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them again, they looked darker than before. Your father didn't run, he said quietly. He didn't disappear. Ava felt like she could barely breathe. Luca looked at her. He was murdered. The words hit her like a knife. For one horrible second, the room disappeared around her. She looked down at the letter in her hands, then back at Luca. Who? Luca stayed silent. That silence terrified her more than anything else, because he knew. He had always known. Luca, she whispered again. His jaw tightened. Then he finally looked at her. Vincent D'Angelo killed him. The same man who destroyed Ava's father was now hunting her. For several seconds, Ava could not move. The words stayed trapped inside the room like smoke. Vincent D'Angelo killed him. Ava sat frozen near the fireplace with the letter still shaking in her hands. Across from her, Luca looked exactly the way he always looked when he was trying not to feel something. Cold, controlled, unreadable. But Ava could see it now. The guilt, the regret, the anger he had been carrying for years. She looked down at the letter again, then back at Luca. You knew this whole time. Luca nodded once. Yes. The answer hurt more than she expected, because after everything they survived together, after everything he had protected her from, he still kept this hidden. Ava stood too quickly from the couch and walked toward the kitchen. She needed space, air, anything. Her hands shook so badly, she almost dropped the letter. Behind her, Luca stayed where he was. Maybe because he knew there was nothing he could say that would make this better. Ava stood near the sink with both hands pressed against the counter. Her entire life had been built around questions. Why did her father leave? Why did nobody come back for her? Why did everyone around her always look nervous when she asked too much? Now she finally had the answers. And somehow, the truth hurt worse than the lies. He died because he tried to protect me. Luca looked at her quietly. Yes. Ava laughed bitterly through tears. He died because he trusted the wrong people. Luca lowered his eyes. For a second, neither of them spoke. Then Ava turned toward him. You said Vincent killed him. Luca's jaw tightened. He found your father before I did. The room went still. Your father had already taken the evidence, Luca said quietly. He had copies of everything. Names, accounts, judges, politicians, men who looked respectable in public and monsters in private. Ava stared at him, and Vincent wanted it back. Luca nodded once. He knew if that evidence ever became public, it would destroy half the city. Ava looked down at the letter in her hands. So my father died trying to expose them. Yes, the answer made something break inside her, because suddenly, her father did not feel like a man who disappeared anymore. He felt brave, good, the kind of man who gave up everything trying to do the right thing. Ava wiped her eyes quickly. And where were you? The question came out quieter than she expected, but Luca still flinched, because he knew exactly what she meant. You were supposed to protect him. Luca looked down at the floor. I know. That answer hurt her more than anger would have, because Luca already blamed himself. He had probably blamed himself every day since it happened. He called me the night Vincent found him, Luca said quietly. Ava looked up. He said he had you hidden somewhere safe. He said he was going to bring you both to me. His voice became rougher. But Vincent got there first. The room became silent again. Ava looked at him. For the first time since she met him, Luca did not look powerful. He looked broken. I spent years trying to find out where they buried him, he said quietly. I never stopped looking. The honesty in his voice made Ava's chest ache, because this was not only her grief. It was his too. For several moments, neither of them spoke. Then Luca stood and walked toward the bookshelf near the wall. He pulled out a thick folder and placed it on the table in front of her. Inside were photographs, court judges, police commissioners, business executives, several city officials. Every page had notes beside the names, money transfers, meeting dates, secret payments. Ava stared down at the photographs in shock. These people are connected to Vincent. Luca nodded once. And to men more powerful than Vincent. His expression darkened. The evidence your father stole does not only expose criminals, it exposes everyone who helped them. The room became quiet, because now Ava understood. This was never just about revenge. It was about survival. Vincent was not trying to protect himself. He was trying to protect an empire. The next morning, Luca's men arrived at the lake house with more bad news. Vincent's people had found 2 more of Luca's safe houses. One of his drivers was missing. Another body had been found near the river outside Manhattan. The walls were closing in. Luca stood near the kitchen table with maps spread out in front of him. His face looked colder now, harder, like the dangerous version of him was coming back. We need to move again, one of his guards said. Luca shook his head immediately. Not yet. The guard looked frustrated. They're getting closer. Luca looked up slowly. I said not yet. The room went silent. Because when Luca looked like that, nobody argued. A few hours later, another car pulled up outside the house. A man named Dominic Russo stepped inside. He was one of Luca's oldest allies. Tall, gray suit, silver hair, the kind of man who looked more like a politician than a criminal. Ava had seen him once before at the hotel. Dominic walked toward Luca and handed him an envelope. We found another warehouse tied to Vincent. Luca opened the envelope and looked through the paper silently. For a second, nothing felt strange. Then Ava noticed something. Dominic would not look at her. He kept his eyes on Luca. Too careful, too controlled. Luca seemed to notice it too. What is it? He asked. Dominic hesitated. Nothing. Luca stared at him. That's not true. The room became quiet. Then Luca slowly pulled one of the papers from the envelope. A photograph slipped out and landed on the table. Ava looked down. Dominic, standing beside Vincent D'Angelo. The room froze. Dominic's face lost all color. Luca looked at the photograph, then at Dominic. For 1 second, nobody moved, because betrayal from enemies was expected. Betrayal from family felt worse. Dominic had worked beside Luca for years. He knew everything. The businesses, the money, the safe houses, the lake house. You've been helping him, Luca said quietly. Dominic swallowed hard. Luca, you told him where we were. Dominic looked desperate now. He promised me protection. Luca stared at him. Years of loyalty destroyed by one weak choice. He promised me he wouldn't hurt you, Dominic said quickly. He only wanted the girl. Ava felt her stomach drop, because suddenly she understood. Vincent was getting closer, because someone inside Luca's world kept opening the door. Luca looked at Dominic with complete disgust. You sold us. Dominic lowered his eyes. I had no choice. Luca almost laughed, but there was no humor in it. There's always a choice. The room stayed silent. Then Luca looked toward 2 of his guards. Get him out of my house. Dominic looked terrified instantly. Luca, please. Get him out. The guards dragged Dominic toward the door. Ava never saw him again. For the rest of the day, Luca barely spoke. He loaded weapons, checked maps, made phone calls, prepared for war. Ava watched him quietly, because she could see what was happening. Every time someone betrayed Luca, he became colder, like he was building walls faster than anyone could break them. That night, she found him standing alone near the lake. The sky was dark. Cold wind moved through the trees. Luca stood with both hands in his coat pockets, staring out at the water. "You cannot keep carrying all of this alone," Ava said softly. Luca did not look at her. "I'm used to it. That does not mean you should be." For a second, he stayed silent. Then he finally looked at her. "Everyone close to me ends up dead." His voice sounded rough. "My mother, your father, men I trusted." He looked away again. "I destroy everything." Ava shook her head. "No." Luca laughed bitterly. "You do not know what I've done." She stepped closer. "No," she said softly, "but I know what you do now." Luca looked at her for a long moment. Then he looked away again, because maybe part of him wanted to believe her, even if he did not know how. Ava moved closer until only a few inches separated them. "You are not the man Vincent is," she said quietly. Luca looked down at her. "And how do you know that?" "Because Vincent destroys people he loves." Her voice shook slightly. "You protect them." For 1 second, the world around them disappeared. Only the lake, the cold air, and the way Luca was looking at her. His hand moved slowly against her face. Warm, careful, like he was afraid she might disappear. "When you walked into that hotel room," Luca said softly, "everything got worse." The words should have hurt, but the way he said them felt different. "Vincent came after you. My world fell apart. People started dying." Ava looked up at him. "Then why are you looking at me like that?" Luca's eyes darkened. "Because somehow you are also the only good thing that has happened to me in years." The room between them went quiet. His hand stayed against her cheek. "I tried not to feel this," Luca said softly, "because you deserve better than me. Because I know what happens to people who get too close to men like me." Ava's chest tightened. "But," she whispered. Luca looked at her for a long moment. Then he finally said the words she had been trying not to hope for. "But I love you anyway." For 1 second, everything else disappeared. Ava reached for him first. Luca kissed her like a man who had spent too long trying not to. Slow at first, then deeper, more desperate, because after all the fear and violence and grief, they finally stopped pretending. Luca wrapped his arms around her tightly. Ava closed her eyes. For the first time in weeks, she felt safe. Then the front door exploded open, and somewhere inside the house, Ava screamed as someone grabbed her. Luca Moretti had destroyed men for power before, but this time he was ready to destroy an empire for love. The men who stormed the lake house moved too fast. 1 second, Ava was in Luca's arms. The next, gunshots exploded through the walls. Glass shattered across the living room. Smoke filled the air. Luca shoved Ava behind him immediately. His gun was already in his hand. He fired twice toward the front hallway. One man dropped. Another crashed through the broken window near the kitchen. The entire house turned into chaos. Ava covered her ears as bullets ripped through the walls around them. Luca grabbed her wrist and pulled her toward the back hallway. "Stay behind me." His voice sounded colder than she had ever heard it. More men rushed inside. Luca fired again. Blood hit the wooden floor. For one horrible second, Ava thought they might actually make it out. Then someone grabbed her from behind. A cloth covered her mouth. She kicked and screamed. Luca turned just in time to see 2 men dragging her toward the back door. "Ava!" He shot one of them instantly, but another slammed something heavy into the side of his head. Luca stumbled. By the time he got back up, Ava was gone. The black SUV carrying her disappeared down the road outside the lake house. Luca stood in the middle of the destroyed living room with blood running down one side of his face. His chest rose hard. His hands shook, not from fear, from rage, because Vincent D'Angelo had just made the biggest mistake of his life. Meanwhile, Ava woke up inside a cold concrete room. Her wrists were tied to a metal chair. A single light hung above her. Gray walls surrounded her. No windows. No way out. For a moment, she had no idea where she was. Then she heard footsteps. Vincent D'Angelo walked into the room. He looked older than she remembered. Silver hair, dark suit, cold eyes. The kind of man who smiled without warmth. He sat down across from her slowly. "You look like your father." Ava stared at him. Hatred moved through her chest instantly. "You killed him." Vincent almost smiled. He should have stayed loyal. The answer made Ava want to scream. Instead, she stayed silent, because she already knew what men like Vincent wanted. Fear. Vincent leaned back in his chair. "Tell me where the evidence is." "I don't know." Vincent watched her carefully. "You expect me to believe that?" "It's the truth." Vincent's face darkened slightly. "Your father died protecting that evidence. Luca burned half the city trying to keep you alive." He leaned closer. "You know where it is." Ava looked directly at him. "No." For 1 second, Vincent's calm expression disappeared. He grabbed her jaw roughly. "Do not lie to me." Ava winced but refused to look away. Because if Vincent wanted fear, she would not give it to him. Back in New York, Luca had already started a war. By sunrise, 3 of Vincent's clubs were burning. 1 warehouse exploded near the docks. Several of Vincent's men disappeared before dawn. Luca did not sleep. He did not eat. He moved through the city like a man with nothing left to lose. Because without Ava, that was exactly what he was. The first person Luca went after was Dominic. One of his guards tracked Dominic to a townhouse in Queens. Luca arrived alone. Dominic looked terrified the second he opened the door. Luca hit him before he could finish speaking. Dominic crashed into the wall. Blood covered his mouth instantly. "You sold her." Dominic looked desperate. "I did not know they were going to take her." Luca grabbed him by the collar. "You told Vincent where we were." Dominic's face twisted with fear. "He promised me money." Luca stared at him. Years of loyalty destroyed by 1 weak choice. "Where is she?" Dominic shook his head. "I don't know." Luca slammed him against the wall again. Wrong answer. By the time Luca left the townhouse, Dominic could barely stand. But Luca finally had something useful. An address. An old shipping yard near the river. One of Vincent's hidden compounds. Luca returned to one of his private safe houses before sunset. Maps covered the walls. Weapons covered the table. Several of his men stood nearby waiting for orders. Luca stood in the center of the room, looking more dangerous than any of them had ever seen him. "We hit every D'Angelo location we know," one of the men said. Luca shook his head. "No." The room went quiet. He pointed toward the address Dominic gave him. "We hit this one." Another man stepped forward. "We also found something else." He placed a folder on the table. Luca opened it slowly. Inside were old bank records, photographs, and copies of hidden accounts. Ava's father had hidden the missing evidence inside a safety deposit box beneath an abandoned courthouse in Manhattan. The evidence did not only expose Vincent, it exposed everyone connected to him. Judges, police chiefs, politicians, businessmen, several mafia leaders. Luca stared down at the pages. Then his expression changed, because some of the names inside the evidence belonged to men who still worked with him. Men who would kill to keep those secrets hidden. One of Luca's older captains looked at him carefully. "If this becomes public, all of us go down." Luca looked at him. "I know. You should destroy it." Luca's expression turned cold. "No." The room went silent, because everyone there understood what that meant. Luca was choosing Ava over everything. Over money, over power, over the empire his family spent years building. That night, Luca and his men surrounded the shipping yard. The compound sat near the river. Old warehouses, broken fences, armed guards near every entrance. Vincent knew Luca would come. Luca stepped out of the SUV with a gun in one hand. Rain covered the ground. Behind him, his men loaded weapons and spread out around the compound. No one spoke. They did not need to, because everyone knew this was not business anymore. This was personal. Inside the compound, Ava sat alone in another room. Her wrists hurt. Her face ached. But she refused to cry. Vincent had questioned her 3 times already. Every answer stayed the same. She did not know where the evidence was. One of Vincent's guards entered the room. "He's here." Vincent stood near the doorway. For the first time, his face showed something close to fear. Then gunshots exploded outside. The building shook. Men shouted in the hallways. Vincent looked toward the sound. Luca had arrived. The next few minutes became chaos. Luca's men stormed the compound from 3 entrances. Bullets tore through the walls. Glass exploded across the floor. Vincent's guards dropped one after another. Luca moved through the building like a man possessed. He shot anyone standing between him and Ava. Nothing slowed him down. Nothing mattered except finding her. He reached the second-floor hallway, just as one of Vincent's men stepped out of the side room. Luca shot him instantly. Then he saw her. Ava sat tied to a chair inside the room, bruised, exhausted, alive. For 1 second, Luca stopped moving. Because after everything, after all the blood and violence and fear, she was still there. Ava. She looked up. The second she saw him, something inside her broke. Luca rushed toward her and untied the ropes around her wrists. His hands moved carefully against her skin. "You're okay," he said roughly. Ava grabbed his coat. "I knew you would come." Luca touched her face. For 1 brief second, the war disappeared around them. Then another gunshot exploded nearby. Vincent's men were still inside the building. Luca pulled Ava behind him and moved toward the hallway. Bodies covered the floor. Smoke filled the air. The entire compound was collapsing into chaos. They reached the lower level just as Vincent appeared near the back exit with 2 armed guards beside him. Everything stopped. Vincent looked at Luca. Luca looked at Vincent. Years of hatred sat between them. Vincent almost smiled. "You really loved her father." Luca's face stayed cold. "Yes." Vincent's eyes moved toward Ava. "And now you love her." Luca stepped in front of Ava immediately. Vincent laughed once. Always the same weakness. Luca lifted the gun slowly. "You should have left her alone." Vincent's expression darkened. She was never supposed to survive. The words hit Ava like ice. Because suddenly, she realized something worse. Vincent had not only wanted the evidence. He wanted to erase every reminder of what happened to her father. Luca's jaw tightened. "You killed a good man." Vincent looked almost bored. "I protected what mattered." Luca looked at him with complete hatred. "No," he said quietly. "You destroyed everything you touched." For 1 second, nobody moved. Then Vincent reached for his gun. Luca fired first. Vincent stumbled backward. Blood spread across the front of his shirt. He looked down in shock. Then he collapsed to the floor. The room went silent. Because just like that, the man who destroyed Ava's life was gone. Luca lowered the gun slowly. Ava stared at Vincent's body. She expected relief. Instead, she only felt empty. Later that night, Luca brought Ava to one of his safest apartments in Manhattan. The city looked quiet outside the windows. For the first time in days, nobody was chasing them. Nobody was shooting at them. Nobody was trying to kill them. Luca placed the recovered evidence across the table. Folders, photographs, drives, the entire truth about Vincent, the judges, the police chiefs, and everyone connected to them. Ava looked through the pages slowly. Then she froze, because there, written across several pages near the front of the evidence, was another name, Luca Moretti. Ava thought the nightmare was finally over, until she learned Luca had been hiding one last betrayal. For several seconds, Ava could not breathe. Luca Moretti. His name appeared again and again across the pages. Bank transfers, private meetings, offshore accounts, payments connected to Vincent D'Angelo, corrupt judges, and several men already listed in her father's stolen evidence. The folder shook in Ava's hands. Across the room, Luca stood near the window. His expression changed the second he realized what she was looking at. The silence between them became unbearable. "You knew," Ava whispered. Luca closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them again, he looked tired, older, like a man who had been waiting for this moment for years. "Ava, you knew your name was in here." Luca looked down at the floor. "Yes." That answer hurt more than anything else. Because after everything they survived, after everything he told her, he still hid this from her. Ava stepped back from the table, slowly. "What did you do?" Luca stayed silent for a second too long. Then he finally spoke. I moved money. Ava stared at him. What? Luca looked at her. When I was younger, my father used me to move money through fake companies and hidden accounts. His voice sounded flat, cold, like he hated every word. I signed papers, opened accounts, delivered cash. Ava felt sick. You helped them? Luca nodded once. I was 20. That answer did not make her feel better, because 20 was young, but it was not a child. You knew innocent people were getting hurt. Luca looked away. At first, no. His jaw tightened. But later, yes. The room became quiet. Ava looked down at the evidence again. Suddenly, all the pieces fit together in the worst possible way. Luca was not only connected to her father's death, he was connected to the entire world that destroyed him. You were part of it. Luca looked at her with pain in his eyes. Yes, the honesty should have mattered. Instead, it only made her angrier. Then why save me, she asked. Why protect me? Luca stared at her for a long moment. Because I spent the last 10 years trying to become someone your father would not hate. The answer broke something inside her. Because for the first time, Luca did not sound like a mafia boss. He sounded like someone drowning in guilt. He walked slowly toward the table. My father controlled everything, he said quietly. Every account, every shipment, every person. His voice darkened. And when I finally realized what he was doing, it was too late. Ava looked down at the papers again. My father trusted you. Luca closed his eyes briefly. I know. You let him down. The words hit him hard. She saw it in his face immediately. But Luca did not defend himself. Because deep down he agreed. He came to me because he thought I would help him. Luca said quietly. And I was too weak to stop what happened. The room felt colder now. Smaller. Because Ava loved him. That was the worst part. After everything, after all the danger and fear and blood, she still loved him. And now she hated herself for it. You should have told me. Luca nodded slowly. I know. You should have told me before I fell in love with you. His face changed instantly. For 1 second, he looked completely shattered, because those words hurt more than anger ever could. Ava turned away from him. She walked toward the balcony doors and wrapped her arms around herself. The city lights glowed below. New York looked peaceful from up here. But inside the apartment, everything felt broken again. Luca stayed behind her. He did not touch her, did not try to force her to listen, because maybe he knew he did not deserve that. I never stopped thinking about him, Luca said quietly. Ava stayed silent. The night he died, the way he looked at me before he left. His voice cracked slightly. I should have gone with him. For the first time since she met him, Luca looked completely defeated. No coldness, no power, just guilt. I spent years trying to fix it, he said. I destroyed my father's businesses after he died. I cut ties with the men who helped him. He looked down at the floor. But none of it changed what I did. The room became quiet again, because he was right. Nothing could change it. Nothing could bring her father back. Several days passed before Ava spoke to him properly again. They stayed inside the apartment. The city still felt dangerous. Some of Vincent's allies had disappeared after his death, but others were still out there, watching, waiting. Luca spent most of his time on the phone, closing businesses, selling warehouses, moving money. At first, Ava did not understand why. Then one afternoon, she walked into the office and found him signing papers. What are you doing? Luca looked up at her. Leaving. She frowned. What? Luca placed the pen down. I'm selling everything. The room went quiet. The clubs, the warehouses, the businesses. He looked at her. All of it. Ava stared at him. You would walk away from all of this? Luca nodded once. There is nothing left here worth keeping. The answer hit her harder than she expected, because for the first time, she realized Luca meant it. He was giving up everything. The power, the money, the empire his family spent years building. For me? Ava asked quietly. Luca looked at her. For a chance. Those words stayed with her long after he left the room, because for the first time, Ava saw something she never expected from Luca Moretti. Hope. Not hope that he could erase the past, but hope that maybe he could still become someone better than it. That night, Ava found an old photograph inside one of the boxes near Luca's office. Her father stood beside a younger version of Luca near the lake house. Both of them were smiling. On the back of the photograph, her father had written one sentence: "You are not your father." Ava stared at the words for a long time, because suddenly she understood something. Her father knew the truth about Luca. He knew Luca was part of that world, but he also knew Luca was different from the men around him. Maybe that was why he trusted him. Maybe that was why he believed Luca could still become something better. The next morning, Ava found Luca standing alone on the balcony. The sunrise covered the city in soft gold light. He looked tired, like he had not slept. When he turned and saw her, something cautious moved into his face, like he was waiting for her to leave. Instead, Ava walked toward him slowly. Luca looked down at her. "You should not forgive me." His voice sounded rough. "I know. After everything I've done. I know." The city stayed quiet around them. Ava looked up at him. "I hate what you did," she whispered. Luca closed his eyes briefly. "But I know you hate it too." For 1 second, neither of them moved. Then Ava touched his face gently. "You spent your whole life becoming the man your father wanted." Her voice shook slightly. "Maybe it is time you become a man mine believed you could be." Luca stared at her like he had forgotten how to breathe, because nobody had ever looked at him with that much faith before, not even himself. Tears filled his eyes for the first time since she met him. He pulled her into his arms slowly, carefully, like he still could not believe she was there. "I love you," he whispered against her hair. Ava closed her eyes. "I know." Over the next month, Luca kept his promise. He sold everything connected to the old world. The clubs, the warehouses, the businesses. He gave money to families hurt by his father and Vincent. He handed copies of the evidence to federal agents through anonymous channels. Judges lost their positions. Police chiefs got arrested. Politicians disappeared from office. For the first time in years, powerful men were finally afraid. Luca did not care. He only cared about Ava. And for the first time in his life, that was enough. A few weeks later, they left New York. No bodyguards. No black SUVs. No guns hidden beneath expensive jackets. Only one car driving west as the city disappeared behind them. Ava sat beside Luca with the window slightly open. Warm air moved through her hair. Luca kept one hand on the steering wheel and the other resting near hers. For the first time, neither of them looked back. A small box rested in Ava's lap. Inside were the last things she had from her father: the watch, the letters, the photographs, and one final file she had not opened yet. As the road stretched ahead of them, Ava slowly opened it. Inside were more old papers, receipts, photographs, names. Then she saw something that made her stop breathing. Another signature. Another man connected to her father's death. Not Luca, not Vincent. Dominic Russo.